Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. As you know, we have a special guest this Friday morning. We have Dion from Dion Talk. How you doing, buddy?
Howdy, doing great. Ready for round two.
Where's the hat, man? I missed the hat. Can you get the hat?
I have the hat. It's the work hat.
It's the work hat.
Actually, the straw hat is the one I work in, but this is the one I wear to work.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that. So, hey, what I want to do here is we were just talking about this great book, 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires, that you will be doing for Audible for us. But something you and I kind of stumbled across kind of off air is there are kind of 4 stages that everybody goes through. And, you and I are arguably at step 3 or 4 of this, but we often have to be reminded that we always started at step 0. So I thought maybe you and I could go through what I believe are 4 stages. And I think that starts with step 0, right? You make the decision and you've got to get yourself right. I call it get your money right. But why don't you kind of talk about what that was for you?
So it might not apply to real estate, but have you noticed that every movie that comes out in the Marvel universe becomes a franchise? Iron Man, Spider-Man, whatever it is that comes out, they all have a prequel.
Yeah.
At some point, there's an origin story.
Right.
So most of us as investors talk about that first stage is, Dave Ramsey, get $1,000, get rid of consumer debt, build up a reserve. I think there's a day when most of us wake up and it's like our brain turns on and we realize, oh, I need to take charge of my money. Someone else isn't going to do this for us. Yeah. So the prequel is all the years that we create consumer debt, buy cars thinking of payment, stretching out payment because how much car can I afford, buy the forever house before we realize how much that's going to cost us. And all of those things that we do where we wake up one day with a bunch of bad debt and a single parent with 3 kids. And we think, okay, so what do I need to do different now? And for me, it was 40.
Yeah.
I had made it to 40 without ever having $1,000 in the bank. Took 8 years to reach financial freedom. So I could have done that at 20, probably easier at 20.
Yeah.
Because financial freedom would have been a lot less than where it was at 40. Could have done it at 30. So I woke up at 40, basically. That's phase 1. What's your starting position? What does your current bad debt look like? What is your income, your debt to income ratio, your work history? So you're bankable or not bankable. And so those first few phases, and there's an order of operations to getting into real estate. Learn how to save, live on less than you make, work on your credit score. I mean, the goal is 740 or higher because then you get the best loans, more likely to qualify. But you could start investing long before 740. That should just be the goal.
Yeah.
And then talk to a lender. What are my options? And then you have to narrow down your footprint. Where are you going to invest? If you're chasing several markets, we don't have the time or energy usually to learn that many markets. And you have to pick a strategy. The first 3 steps, save, credit score, lender, pretty much the same for everybody. But after that, if you're going to invest in joint venture, syndications, REITs, local, at a distance, all of the different strategies to get you towards that goal is very different. So picking a strategy, that's all in that first phase. And that's the logic of, okay, so here's how I would do it. But what are we willing to sacrifice?
Exactly.
This is where most of the investors I've heard on your channel, on a nice big house, moves into a 4-plex. I was living in a single family house, a 4-bedroom on a lake with boat access, with tennis court, basketball court, private boat launch. And we moved into an apartment complex. And I've heard people say, oh, my family would never do that. Well, the one benefit of being single is I get to make the decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
I ran it by the kids and they were excited.
Yeah.
You know how many kids live in apartment complexes? And it has a heated pool, not this frozen lake half the time. And so if you think your family's resistant, maybe have you even brought it up to them? And so we kind of take that step back. And house hacking is one version, cutting down on expenses, maybe delaying or really reducing the type of vacations we take for those first few years before the second stage happens, where you don't eat out a lot, you control your food budget. House hacking is our largest expense. So if you can reduce or eliminate your housing expense, that has the biggest impact. But in those first few years, we also have to have patience, especially when we hear the experts that come on here and talk about what year 10 or year 20 looks like.
Yeah. This is so awesome because this is something we've got to do more on this channel. Let's talk about either step 0, kind of your origin story, or step 1. Because I think we do a lot of step 3 and 4, or step 2 and 3. I don't remember where we're at. Where anyway, 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk a lot of logistics and not start.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, right, my origin story, I've talked about it many times. I've tried to include it in everything I do. I was in the rat race, didn't know it, made a bunch of money, lost a bunch of money. I was probably as depressed or defeated as I'd ever been. For you, it started at 40. For me, it started at 30. We had a little bit of money because we cashed out a freaky stock market. Ring a bell to what's going on today. And I had to take control. We had to do something. My real estate market didn't make sense where I lived. Everybody says invest where you live. That just wasn't an option for me. I had to go somewhere else. And oh, by the way, I have a fear of flying. So that took away out of state. So we had to get in the car and drive a lot. I mean, think about that. We want to go see one house. It's a 5-hour day, 2.5 hours out, 2.5 hours back. We did that 3 times a month for, I don't know, 2.5 years, something like that. We need to talk about that more because it's hard. It's slow. You know, we had enough down payment. I think we ended up getting 3 with the money we had. We did 20% down and then we did 10s. So 20, 10, 10s. And then it was slow. Had a horrible first tenant. It's slow. The first 5 years are slow, right? You got to wait for the income snowball. You got to wait for your reducing of expenses to get going. Oh, by the way, the real estate market is racing up at the same time. It was tough. I know exactly how people feel because I lived through it, you know, just 20 years ago.
Well, there's something kind of cool that I'm going to call you out on.
Okay.
Hopefully you take this in the light nature that it's intended. For work, for an employer, I think you and I are both, we've said it several times, we're both good employees.
Yes.
I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not buying investment properties to have a job. I'm buying investment properties to make work optional. Mm-hmm. You have been on 6 continents mm-hmm. in a week for your job.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you said this sentence, I have a fear of flying, so I wanted to invest where I could drive to it.
Yep.
So for an employer, I will at 5:30 in the morning when it's 6 degrees outside, go out and teach backing. I got my little Russian burqa thing on, covering my face because it's cold, right?
Yeah.
For an employer. At 6 o'clock in the morning, if somebody called me and said, hey, we've got this massive leak, I'm like, handyman, plumber, this is the address, you guys go there, right? So for my own stuff, so you didn't want to fly for your own investments. I don't want to do something at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's cold for my own investments, but I would do it for the employer. Mm-hmm. That's a mental shift, I think, that a lot of us need to understand. Mm. Our financial freedom can be as important as what we do for our boss or the company we work at. Maybe not flying, but you figured it out. You said, okay, so I don't want to fly for my personal investments, but I'll drive 2 hours, 2.5 hours, you know, so a one day turnaround is basically there and back. How much time can you actually spend there? Yeah. So what are people willing to do for themselves in the beginning?
Yeah. And again, people, I hope people hear that, because again, my life at that time, I worked essentially 6 days a week because I always traveled Sundays. In my line where I was in the organization, I had to be somewhere Monday morning. And unfortunately, most weeks that was not my backyard. So I was very frequently on airplanes by noon on Sunday. So my one day, because I was always home Fridays, my one day was Saturday. And for the longest time, Saturday was Fresno Day. Yeah, it's weird. It's funny to think about.
What the challenge is, where we are now, where my cash flow from my rentals is more than I make on my W-2 job, and yours is probably close to where it was when you were at your peak of W-2 or more.
Well, I was in a commission-based job. My cash flow is better than every year except 2.
Okay, so right, so it's better than every year except 2 in a long career.
Correct.
So we know it works. We know that making Saturday Fresno Day instead of Netflix Day, but if it wasn't there, I don't know when that started. But
yeah, I get it.
Right, again, it wasn't relaxed day. It wasn't D&D gaming day for whatever the thing was.
Right.
Mine was the same. It wasn't stay in the house on the lake and relax and just work. It was move into an apartment complex, have all my friends look at me like,
What are you
the one-
doing?
the ones that showed up to help me move, they thought, you're moving from that house to this third story apartment complex, and you're too cheap to hire movers. Because at that time I was, beer and pizza like everyone else does.
Yeah.
And now I would never have somebody help me move because it's so cheap to hire 2 guys in a truck.
Mhm.
Remembering what it's like to start out and not knowing that it's going to work is key.
That right there was the whole reason I did this, because my story is my story. Your story is your story. We know it well. We share it all the time. But I wanted to collect 15 amazing other stories, because you just never, in my opinion, in this book, you're not going to connect with all 15 stories. That wasn't the intention. My hope is you find 3. They're like, I'm going to reread those, because I did that. I have, hopefully I can get it. Where is it? Oh, right here. This book for me was one that I went back to, but it wasn't for the book. It was for this gray pages in the back where he's talking about Bill O'Kane and Jimmy and Linda and Barbara, right? Just those 1 pages. I read those 3-4 years in a row going, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That's why this book was born. This book, the last 30 pages became this book. And now instead of just 7 paragraphs, you've got 8, 9, 10 pages. So thank you, Gary, for inspiring the second book.
And I do think people should follow pretty much the same track. Read through the book once, at least once.
Yeah.
Find the couple of chapters that they think, okay, these are the story, and just mark them.
Yeah.
Every now and then go back and go, oh, this is what this person went through to get where they are. Because there are going to be challenges in those first few years.
I want to get you from, you're in the game, right? 1 rental at a time. My first book got you in the game. Okay, he did it. I like his story. I bought a rental. But God damn it, the water heater just broke. Oh, my tenant ghosted me, right? I tried to do a bird project and I didn't do it well. I want to give you 15 stories that went through all this, the yuck, the muck, just the yuckiness, and got to the other side. So find the 3 stories that resonate with you. And when you have a bad day, read them, because it does pay off. It's like real estate wants to test you. Are you willing to sacrifice and pay the price to get to the other side? I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
There's going to be something in that book that the reader sees that helps him get past a challenging moment. Sometimes it's what we've read. Sometimes it's what we've seen. Sometimes it's what we've heard. You and I did a video yesterday that's coming out this weekend where we don't really attack my brother, but we say enough things where
I do.
David, you are justified when you punch me the next time we see each other in this video. I get it. But he said something once, he said several things. He's kind of been not a role model, but like I want to emulate what he's done, right? Yeah. So I respect him and I'm trying to do what he did, or
sure.
I did what he did. But one time in the beginning of his real estate, way before I was an investor, we were talking about why people sometimes don't get into real estate. Mm-hmm. And it came up, what happens when a tenant trashes your property? Mm-hmm. And he just said, well, I set the bar really low. I expect every tenant to pour cement down the drain, to punch holes in the drywall, to burn the place to the ground, to do everything bad. So when I show up and all I have to do is pay somebody $300 or $400 to clean the place, it's like winning the lottery. Mm. So if you expect those bad things, and then when they happen, they're not such a challenge, right? So that's one thing that he said that I just kind of filed away, like this book, where you could find that chapter where the person says one thing that you identify with, yeah, and have it marked. So when you run into that challenging day where something bad happened, you go back and you could just go through that, kind of like a mantra to set your mind right.
I love it. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate these conversations. Where can people find you?
Right here on YouTube, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Live streams are Tuesday afternoons, 4 p.m.
And you do those until the question stops. I'm so impressed.
I do. It averages around 3 hours once a month. Once a month, I do it short because there's a live meetup that I put together, which ended up being on Tuesday. It's the only day that worked for everybody. So I cut short to get out of there for that.
Very cool. Well, thank you for everything you do, Dion.
Thank you. Ciao.